Hey everybody, it's Rabbit. Welcome to the channel, and today we're going to be looking at some of the new features for the Royale upgrade for War Thunder. And we're going to see some of the good and some of the less good elements as we go through, so join us for a minute. Now, while I do play some naval, I'm not super bully on the French Navy, so I'm not going to be attempting the beta, so I don't really expect any content on that. Looks pretty good so far, but I don't have enough knowledge of naval to really make a good assessment on that. One of the more interesting features was the addition of what's called retarded bombs. Now, obviously, to retard something is to slow it down, and these bombs have things like air brakes or drag chutes to slow them down. Now, you might obviously be wondering, why would I ever want to use a bomb that just goes slower? And the answer is for high-speed, low-altitude passes on targets. So this does open up a new playstyle for top-tier air, specifically because top-tier air, it can be very difficult to approach the battlefield, and conventional bombs, because they're obviously going as fast as you are going when you release them, if you do high-speed, low-altitude passes, it's very difficult to get them anywhere near the target, even with a ballistic computer. So I do actually like this addition to the game. I think the retarded bombs actually add a lot to the game. They add a new playstyle. I actually found them to be quite easy to use even without a ballistic computer, because I was trying them with the F-80 just to see how they worked, and overall my opinion is pretty positive. I think they're a better addition than things like dozer blades or napalm, because both dozer blades and napalm are kind of situational, like not even situational. Like dozer blades are only really useful for digging your own grave, essentially, and napalm is only useful for going after bases. So I really like this edition. I think it was great, and I had some fun testing it out and taking it into matches. So next up, and something we do have to discuss, is the missile changes. So Gaijin changed the physics of how missiles fly, and this negatively affected the guidance of quite a few missiles. Now, going in and doing some testing, granted I was only able to test like a handful of missiles over the course of matches, so it's possible there are some that I missed, but on the whole, the anti-tank missiles looked fine. It took some adjusting to, and it will probably still be difficult to hit targets that are moving fast at long range. But on the whole, I didn't find the anti-tank missiles to be in that bad of a shape. It just feels like it takes a little bit of getting used to. The anti-aircraft missiles, on the whole, weren't that bad. Some were definitely worse than others. The Tor M1 for China, for example, was quite good. But the Rolands, man, the Roland 1 and 3 are awful right now. Even hitting targets in a straight line is quite difficult with them. I was getting very frustrated trying to test those missiles. I don't think I hit any jet at all. Those missiles are just super bad right now, and that definitely needs a fix. So hopefully Gaijin will put some kind of patch out correcting them, because if they don't, any nation that's reliant on Rolands like Germany and France is kind of screwed. We also got the addition of the new Python missiles. Now, Python missiles are Israeli, and also the Chinese J8F currently has them. And the Python missiles gimmick is that they're quite fast, and their visible burn time, where you can actually see the smoke trail, is actually pretty short. So this puts Pythons in kind of a weird area where if your opponent doesn't see the actual missile launch, they're probably just going to eat it on the chin. It's actually difficult to both spot them and react to them before they hit you. The problem is, at the end of the day, they are still infrared missiles. If your opponent is aware of what's going on and they cut afterburners and flare, they're probably going to dodge them 100% of the time. Overall, I didn't notice any major flare resistance to the missile. It has the standard kind of pseudo flare resistance, where if it goes through the flares and still sees the enemy exhaust, it can lock onto them, but it's not very difficult to just ensure that doesn't happen. So at the end of the day, they're not very useful against aware opponents, and you do have a scenario where top tier air right now is very much it's very much a semi-active, like a radar homing missile meta, and if you don't have radar missiles, all you can really do is fly defensively, and you can't do anything on that initial approach. You just have to wait till you get past the other person or try and get in behind the other team. So I don't think this really changes it up too much. The Kafir was quite good with the Pythons, but that's because the Kafir is upgrading from AIM-9Gs, which are quite bad. So when it initially launched, it was a boom and zoom aircraft without any boom, which is kind of frustrating. The J8F is not in the best possible shape. It's very much just a supporting like rat aircraft, because it can't really do anything on its own. I would have much rather just have the pulse Doppler radar on the SB-Days missiles and keep the PL5s because those were still an acceptable IR missile, and that would make it more meta, but it is what it is. The Israeli Nets gets Pythons, which is just objectively better than the AIM-9Ls it has, so that's pretty good. It makes it not the worst F-16, but it's still pretty low on the list because it doesn't have radar-guided missiles. However, the real downer for me was discovering that the Kurnos 2000 lost its AIM-7 Sparrows and gained Pythons, and that is the worst thing imaginable. Because it went from a very meta plane with really good missiles in both areas to now all you have are IR missiles, and the Kurnos 2000 does not have the flight performance to run with only IR missiles. It really tanks its performance pretty hard. Gaijin knew this because they preemptively dropped its battle rating from 11.7 to 11.3. Also, the Pythons can't be used on the same pylon as the Paveways, the 2,000 pounders, unlike the AIM-9Ls, who could. So if you're using those bombs, you actually still kind of have to use the AIM-9Ls, which means you don't really get the benefit of Pythons. So it just became worse in both the ground battle and air battles, which is kind of frustrating, because I really like the Kurnos 2000, and I would have been fine if they had just not given it the Pythons rather than basically neuter it. But it is what it is. Next up, we have a brand new location. This map is actually pretty good. I like the general sightlines, I like the flow of the map. Everything kind of makes sense. You're not getting like cross-mapped from some weird LOS that you couldn't see. The battle ratings I've ended up playing it at were 4.0, 6.3, 9.3, and 12.0. So I basically played it at a pretty good mix of battle ratings, and I didn't find one where it just felt like it played like complete crap. It's actually pretty reasonable to get to the capture points at basically any VR. The sightlines make sense at pretty much any VR. It has good routes in the map at pretty much any VR. So overall, I think it's a really good map. I hope they do more like it. As far as the vehicles on the whole, it doesn't really feel like there are any world beaters coming out this time around. The F-14B is probably the standout. The F-14B is a pretty good aircraft. You have the really good Sparrows, you have the really good AIM-9L Sidewinders. You also top that off with some Phoenixes just for some long range playing around. You have some really good air-to-ground ordnance in the form of laser-guided bombs. You also have a wide variety of like dumb bombs and rockets, and even the new retarded bombs. I think the F-14B works quite well. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be using it as my new aircraft for US CAS support whenever I get finished baiting it. The M4T26 is kind of dodgy. I think it'd be great if it was at 5.7, but at 6.0, it's 1 BR below the Pershing, and USA doesn't really have like a 6.0 lineup. So you're not going to play it at 6.3, because why would you play a Pershing with a worse hull? Why would you play a Pershing with a Sherman hull when you could play a Pershing with a Pershing hull? And at 5.7, it would be more competitive with the 76mm HVSS Sherman and the M36B2, but it is what it is. BTR-70 is in an awkward spot because I kept running into American heavies, and you can't really hurt them, and they all have 50 cal, so that's kind of a problem. But it seems fine. Usually when you get these really fast vehicles with autocannons, the Gaijin really screws up the BR. This one feels a lot more reasonable, partly because it doesn't have a stabilizer, and also partly because its rate of fire isn't super high, so even when you catch opponents out, you sometimes just don't have the rate of fire to kill them, but overall it feels more balanced than a lot of the other like wheeled autocannon vehicles we have in the game. Honestly, there really isn't that much else that has struck me as like immediately world-beating vehicle-wise. I think the rest of it is, you know, quote-unquote fine. There are some interesting vehicles, but nothing like too bananas. So, Overall, I've enjoyed playing the game since the update. I like the new map. The new vehicles are interesting, nothing too crazy overpowered. They also seem to have done some weird stuff with the audio where it's easier to hear enemy engine noises, because I think it actually plays fake engine noises, but that's fine. I would much rather them do that than have tanks that have no engine noise just sneak up on you for no reason. So anyway, they appear to have straightened that out. Honestly, if they can iron out some of the issues with the surface-to-air missiles, I really think this would be a pretty good update, but it kind of depends on what they can do with that. The roll-ins really need looking at, though. But anyway, I think Royale, it's a fine update. Not the best, not the worst. Anyway, if you like the video, please like and subscribe, and feel free to comment if you do like the update or what you like about it. Have a nice day, everybody.